Well, thanks everybody for being here for our artist talk, and I really appreciate people coming in to take part. Today we're here to look and listen to Bethany Hartman, who is painting these landscapes that are really interesting for a couple of reasons. You know, I think landscape art is, landscape paintings are pretty commonly known now, but it wasn't so long ago in the history of art making that landscape was always in the service of something else. It was always a setting for some other thing, for a grand history painting or something like that. And so this kind of painting became known kind of as pure landscape. That is, landscape is just for and of and by itself. It has long had a tradition of being connected with spirituality. The artists of what was known as the Hudson River School of the 19th century, late 19th century, felt that there was a connection to God through the recreation of His creation, God's creation. So that is something that I think that Bethany has mentioned, and I'd be interested to hear if she wants to talk about that, or if you want to ask her about that at a certain point. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself, because what I really need to do is just introduce you to Bethany. Bethany is a native of Virginia, from Central Virginia and near Lynchburg. You live in Good.
Yes, small little town.
Little town in Good. She recently got her Bachelor of Fine Arts degree, her BFA degree, from the School of Visual Arts at Virginia Tech. I know that we're very lucky in Virginia to have some really great art programs, some really great Bachelor of Fine Arts programs, and of course there's VCU and College, University, and lots of schools. But I think that maybe people don't think enough about what's going on at Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech has a really vibrant art program. They have a school that's called the School of Virginia Art at the School of Art at Virginia Tech. So it's known by its acronym SOVA, School of Visual Arts. And I'm a little biased. My wife teaches there, and in fact, Bethany was a student of my wife's for a time. So I hope you have questions for her, because for many of you, she's not that far removed in age and experience, but yet she's pioneered some new territory that some of you will be looking for. So I hope you will ask her questions about that as well. So her artwork, her experience, her practice, and I think all of those things could be of interest and of value to all of you. Then, without more ado, let me ask you to join me in welcoming Bethany Hartman. That's fine. Is it good?
Fine.
I feel like I'll have to turn around so you all can hear me and I can make eye contact with everyone. Thank you guys so much for coming. I do really appreciate that. And thank you, Jerry, for hosting me and for letting me come and show here. I really appreciate that. So I was thinking about if I was in the audience, what were some things that I would want to ask an artist, and what were some things that I would be curious for? So that's kind of how I've sculpted the things that I'm going to talk about. First thing I want to talk about is, why am I creating the things that I'm creating personally, and then what do I want my audience to be, what am I creating for the audience's eyes, and what do I want them to think about when they're looking at it? And then I also want to talk about a little bit about my practice, how I make things, and then what it's like after graduation. How do you make time for that? How many of you guys are currently studying art? Just so I have a gauge of who's in the audience. Okay, cool.
Everyone's taking art classes.
Okay. Awesome. So we all have something in common then in that. So first I want to talk about, why am I making these pieces? And I'll talk about what drives me as an individual to spend time doing that. I've always wondered that with artists, like, why do they spend their time doing something, and how do they define it as worthy of their time? So I'm interested in that. You guys may not be, but I thought I would share it anyways, because it's something I'm interested in with artists. So personally, when I'm looking at painting landscape paintings in specific, that's how I've invested my time in art so far, is I'm interested in how they reflect God and how they portray him. I grew up around the Bible. That was like a cultural thing for me when I was growing up, was the Bible was very much a part of my life culturally, and then later it became something personally. So I always had things like, the heavens declare the glory of God and the earth proclaims his handiwork. Not sure what that means, but I've always heard that. And so that's always rattling around in my brain. And then also thinking about things like that the things that he's created display his eternal nature, and that's something else. Not sure what that means, but I've heard that, and that's part of my culture and also part of who I am personally. So when I come to a painting, those are concepts that I'm exploring. I'm exploring to understand where I come from through both my family history and my personal history. So that's one thing. Why I paint to understand things that I'm thinking about. I also paint to understand, for me, it's relationship with God, but I think it can be broader than that. I think it can link into how I interact with other people in general. I like to paint sometimes very closely to things, and so I think, well, you draw near to people, or you draw near to God when you're getting to know them, or I paint very far away from things. Like sometimes I'll stand back and look at it and figure something out, and so I think about that too. Sometimes you observe people, or I observe God in the way he behaves, and that's how I understand something. So I think about those patterns. I also think about the time it takes to make something, and so those are all things that drive me personally in my creation of art, is understanding concepts, understanding people, and understanding God. I don't believe that that's the same approach my viewers have when they come to my art. I don't think, oh, they're thinking about all the things I'm thinking about when they're looking at something. So when I'm making something and I'm thinking about what do I want my viewers to see, or is there something I want to convey to my viewers? I think what I've been pondering lately is I want to create spaces for stillness and spaces for reflection. That's one of the reasons right now my favorite pieces are the large ones, because they kind of take up, if you're standing in front, they can take up your peripheral as well. And I really like creating something to stand in and to be still in and to reflect in. I like my smaller ones that draw you into something. So I think about, I want to create environments for the viewer to be still in, to look at, to think if they want to think, or just like rest if they want to rest. So those are some things that I'm thinking about as a viewer, because I think every viewer comes in with their own perspective and their own belief system. So I want to create windows for that to happen, windows for reflection, windows for space to happen in. So that's another thing that I'm thinking about for my audience, how I want to interact with them in these pieces. So it's a little bit of brief background into what drives me personally and what drives me with my audience. How do I want to communicate them and interact with them through my art? I've spoken very briefly about, coming close to pieces and coming far away. So I think I'll speak more on that now. How much time did you want to spend on the artist talk?
You're fine. Take your time.
Okay. Because I can speak quickly or slowly. So
Slow down. It's okay.
Sounds
You can take
good.
your time.
Sounds good. So when I'm working with the things, if you guys have read any of the labels or even looking at them, a lot of them are on wood. That's become my preference as of late. I really like the resistance that wood provides. Has anyone worked on canvas? Is anyone else a painter? Enjoys doing that? A few of us are? Okay, cool. Yeah, they have. Anybody a painter, worked on canvas before or on wood before?
Well, the difference I think she's getting at is the difference between working on panel, which is a hard surface, and you've all worked on panel, versus stretch canvas, which has a springiness to it, and so that's what she's getting at, is that preference for wood has to do with that resistance or lack of so.
Well worded. Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. Like they feel different when you paint on them. So right now, I've really enjoyed the resistance of that. I also like that wood is durable. I found that when my paintings become precious to me, like when I feel like I can't dive into them, or if I need to, say I've made a really big mistake and I want to scratch it off or sand it off, I'm afraid to do that with a canvas because I think it's too precious. But with wood, I have no qualms about that. I scrape things off, sand them away if I really don't care for it. So for me, wood has helped the painting from becoming too precious that I'm afraid to work on it. I like to do a lot of layering and a lot of scratching away. So again, wood has helped me with that. So I guess I'm in the midst of exploring different mediums. So I do have some canvases on here, I think mostly on that wall, but a lot of the rest of them are wood. So exploring wood for its qualities. In terms of painting, I do like oil painting a lot. That's what all of these are. And I appreciate the sculpting quality of it. I like that you can build it up a lot. I really like the texture in this one. I think this one may have shows a lot of the texture. You can see it either in the sky or even in the mountains, that you can really build up texture to build out the space of it actually being formed, or even you can create an illusion of space through paint. So I really love the sculpting quality of oil paints. I also appreciate that it dries really slowly. I don't paint on these every day. I frequently don't have time for that, so I like that it dries very slowly. That way, let's say I paint on it one day, but I need a day in between to do some other work. I have time to come back to it, and it'll still be wet underneath, so I like that I can bring that out again, bring the moisture out to work it back in with new paint. So that works really well with my lifestyle right now and how much time I have to invest in it. And in terms of scale and size of the surfaces, I like squares a lot. For me, I don't know if this is the case. I've wondered if it has to do with, like, you know, Instagram, everything is squares. I think maybe I'm just used to shapes that are easily cropped like that. So I've been thinking about that lately. I was like, why do I keep choosing squares over and over? I think it's something I'm familiar with. So I am gravitating more towards squares or long linear pieces. Those tend to be my preferences. Every time I have a different scale shape, I'm not exactly sure how to work with it yet, so I'm sure I can explore that later. But for right now, I really appreciate the squares.
Can I jump in and say something?
Yes.
That's really fascinating what you just said, because that's a really interesting cultural shift. Traditionally, a lot of times, you know, and you know this from printing from a computer, that they tend to call vertical orientation of rectangles portrait and horizontal ones landscape. And that really has to do with the history of art. And portraits are vertical and landscapes are horizontal. But it also has to do with how we look at things, and that when you look at a person, there's a tendency for your eyes to move in this direction. You look at their face, you look at their body, you look at their face. When you walk out the door and into a landscape, you scan, because your eyes, and there's a sort of an automatic nature to that. That's the way you physiologically interact with the world. If you move your eyes back and forth, it puts you in the mind of landscape. And then squares, one of the things that in abstract art that they have been attracted to is squares often will give a painting more of a feeling of being an object, not a space, not a window. Like traditionally paintings are like windows. But when you have a square, they have more of an objectness to them. So that's traditionally how I would describe the difference between horizontal landscapes and squares. But this idea of being influenced by social media like Instagram, which has been around now for 10 years, that's actually a pretty interesting phenomenon. And that our phones, that our cameras now, they've got, you know, square or panorama. And so it's interesting that you're drawn to squares and to very long landscapes. That's fascinating. It could be a whole new cultural shift we're in the midst of.
Perhaps. We'll have to watch each other as we're going forward to see if that happens.
That's really cool. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I find that interesting. I don't mean
No, not at all. Yeah. So that's one reason I choose the shape for that.
What's that?
I think the next thing is I'm no longer in school, so I've graduated, and so I have a job. I work at a call center, so it wouldn't be like something that I would consider, that's such a creative job, Bethany, wow, that's so cool, like you work at a call center, that's like amazing. So I wouldn't describe my job as that. I'm certainly grateful for it, but it's not like a creative job. So I really wondered about that, like, is that job, like how does that move forward? Like I've spent all this time and money investing in creating art and becoming an artist, so like how does that, like does that help me, does that hinder me? And something that I had a mentor in college, in addition to Betsy, another one that I had was a drawing professor, and like he really gave me good advice about like thinking about your future as an artist. Like sometimes you'll have jobs that are creative, like maybe you're an art professor, like that isn't something creative that you get to teach people about that, and sometimes it's not creative, like maybe you're a waitress or maybe you work at a call center, and Travis really helped me understand that your job either moves you forward creatively in the way that like you're spending your time in your job and that's your creative outlet, or it's going to provide you energy to do that outside of work. So because I don't invest a lot of creative energy at my work, I've got a ton of that sitting around, you know, like, oh, I'm ready to go create something. Like I've just talked to all these people, but I haven't been very creative with that. So I find that my job actually saves me energy so that I have time to invest that in either after work or sometimes before work, depending on that. So that hopefully that's an encouragement for you guys as you graduate and as you're looking for jobs out there. Your job isn't necessarily where your creativity has to be at. Sometimes it's outside of that, and sometimes it gives you space and energy to be creative outside of that. So that's one thing that I found that's helped me after graduation. So I do spend a lot of time after work, I find mostly. In the evenings, I spend a lot of time in my painting studio. I live on a farm in a small rural area, so my parents have graciously given me a shed that's not used. So it's not fancy, it's not nice or anything, but there's really good lighting in it. I'm away from my family, so I have a lot of like quiet space to work in. I literally paint on cardboard boxes. Those are my easels, so not glorious in any way, but it works. And so you guys can find spaces wherever you're living to make art. It doesn't have to be like a fancy studio, though I would love that, and I'm sure we all would. There's spaces to create outside of being in art school, so I really appreciated that after graduation. Something I've missed, so when you work outside of school, I've really missed having the feedback that people have or that professors can give you or questions that you get asked. I wouldn't say my family comes out and like, Bethany, tell me about what you're thinking when you're making this, or how come you chose like this instead of this? So I don't really get that anymore. I'd love to pursue more of that by looking for other artist connections in my community, but I don't really have that right now. So that is something that I missed and that I treasured when I was, if you're in school studying right now, that's something to be treasured right now, is to think about what kinds of questions people are asking you now and try to remember them when you're on your own. Like I think about questions that like my professors or peers have asked me, and I try to like ask this again, like would I do this in the same way? Like what do I think about this? Like how can I critique my own work? So that's something difficult, I think, when you're out, but I think you can pursue it again through artist communities. I just haven't had a chance to find that yet in my community. Do you guys have any questions? I feel like I've monologued for quite a while, so I'd love.
This should be great.
Yeah.
You brought it. You set the stage with some really interesting points. You know, you've got some artistic things that have to do with the making of the artwork, and then there's the part about existing as an artist. And I think that those are two really interesting aspects. And you've laid down some pretty good ideas for us about how you do those things. And so this is a good time for questions to see if. Think about whether you might have questions about either of those aspects, how she's making paintings, how she's making decisions, but also how she's making choices about her life and how she's making art fit into that. That's tricky. Anybody have questions?
You know why I always do?
Yes, Richard.
I want to know, do you go up in the mountains and paint these paintings?
Great question. I love hiking and backpacking, so I do that frequently with a lot of free time as well. But I don't bring this huge piece of wood up to paint it. Don't do that. So I do bring my camera. I have a pretty nice camera that I bring with me in a lot of places. So sometimes it's from my camera, and then I'll paint from my computer sometimes, like just pull up the image. Pretty normally, I'll start with the image as a reference from a location that I've been, and then I'll try to move off of it pretty quickly, or at least not reference it as strongly so that each time I come back to it, like let's say I was beginning for the first time with this one after my last painting session, I would come up to it not with the computer or not with the previous image and say, okay, if I didn't have the image to look at, and if I didn't have this first surface to look at, how would I start again? So I try to keep it fresh each time. So I don't paint out in the mountains. I reference them from pictures that I've taken.
And the other part of my question was, these look more like the Rocky Mountains than the Smoky Mountains.
Yeah.
Do you have a connection with the Rocky Mountains?
More with like Montana mountain ranges. So
Pardon me?
in Montana, I have friends there, so a lot of times I'll fly out to go hiking with them or to spend time there. Yeah, so I really love that. So
Montana is beautiful. I've seen some pictures of that place.
Yeah, if you guys ever get a chance to go and if you enjoy being outside, it is really.
I really like to ask that question, because I was curious about that too, because these mountains don't look like East Coast mountains. They don't look like the Rockies.
And even I find like when I'm painting a Virginia scene, even the way that I paint it is different than I would paint a different one. Like let's see if there's, so like some of these over here, like the top one, or actually did I bring anyone? The bottom one underneath there is one from Virginia. I think that was from like when I went to rice fields. And that's a hike not too far away. And so I find that like I even paint them a little bit differently. I like harsher lines, I find for like spaces like Montana, and more softer hues for Virginia scenes. So yeah.
This part of this painting right here, I really like this part right here. Because it takes you in there. But I wanted to ask you about this part. Is this like atmospheric also? Is there something going on with some clouds?
Not specifically in that
But this
picture,
one
but
you can go into it. It feels the depth in that way. And then
yeah.
I was just wondering, sorry.
Yeah, no, that is a good question. There definitely wasn't like clouds and things in front of that. I did like some of the conceptual. I did want there to be a little bit of, I guess, mystique or with that. So not so much in the original image, but tried to paint it in a little bit in the foreground as well. But that's a really great question. Thank you. Yeah.
I want to say first, when I walked in the door the first day, I saw this. I really loved it.
Thank you.
But I see some of them look more abstract, and then you have some that's there that seem more realistic.
Yeah.
Do you go through stages of that, or do you switch from one to the other, or do you find yourself, getting into it, I'm going to do it this way this time, and then I'm tired of it? Mm-hmm. Or is it just simultaneous?
I do them a lot together. They give me breaks from each other. I find if I work too abstract for a long period of time, I start to miss the detail because it's not as detailed and my eyes aren't getting as close to it. So maybe it's just my posture. I get tired of like standing in one spot or like looking too close to another one. So I do them both together, but I switch off and on between them. A lot of times I'll have like 4 or 5 paintings going on at once. Mm-hmm.
That's good. That's interesting. So, things to keep in mind. You've got multiple projects happening simultaneously. You're not working on one painting, finishing it, and then when you finish that painting, then moving to the next one. But rather, there seems to be somewhat, I wouldn't say exact, but somewhat of a correlation between size and abstraction. You seem to, everything in the abstract, the more abstract paintings is the size is bigger, but also the marks are bigger.
Yes.
And so there's a relationship, and then it tends, the smaller ones is where I see more of that naturalism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if this is.
I would say that's very much true because I think sometimes I get tired working in small. So I think if I were to approach a large canvas and say, all right, like I have to set as small as I do on a small painting, I'm going to do this on a large one. I think for me it would lose some of the delight in actually painting it. So I think that is true. Size definitely dictates.
You use all different muscles too. I mean, when you paint big, you're actually using your large muscles
Mm-hmm.
and your small muscles.
Yeah.
A lot of your paintings are, all of them to me, when you walk in here, you say grandiose. But this, you were talking about your feelings. This particular one has a lot of spirituality in it. Could you tell us how that one is very inspirational?
Yeah.
It's like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
what were you thinking when you did that one?
I was thinking about a couple of things. mostly a lot of biblical stories I was pondering as I was doing this one. So I was thinking about the concept of like Moses or other prophets going up into the mountains, and that's where the Lord would meet them. And so that was one thing that I was considering, like, how come the mountaintops, like how come that's where like God was meeting the prophets there? And then I was also thinking about Psalm 19, which is one of the reasons I titled that, talking about how the heavens declare the glory of God and the earth proclaims his handiwork. And so that's another thing I was like, I don't understand.
Could you slow down and say that one again?
Yes.
What was the song?
Psalm 19, which part of it says that the heavens declare the glory of God and the earth proclaims his handiwork. And so that was another thing that I was pondering as I was making that is, how do the heavens declare his glory? What is his glory? And then how does the earth proclaim his handiwork, and what is his handiwork? So those were some thoughts that I was thinking about as I was making that. Thank you.
Wow. Because that painting has a decidedly different treatment of the sky than any other painting here. So it has an abstraction related to life phenomena.
Well, this sky over here, that's kind of an inspirational, natural look, you know. Pink sky at night, sailor's delight. You know that saying?
I have heard that before. I'm not sure what that means, but
Well, it means that pink sky at night, that the next day is going to be nice. But if you have a pink sky in the morning, you're going to have rain that day.
that's interesting. That's really interesting.
Pink sky at night, sailor's delight. Pink sky in the morning, sailor's warning. That's how I do my weather. Go outside.
We'll all have to start doing that now.
Well, I'm doing a landscape right now, and I'm doing it in a rectangle.
Vertical. Yeah. Doing vertical, right?
Vertical.
Yeah.
Yeah, vertical. And, which is you're gonna have to look up and down
Yeah.
and wonder what's over here and over there.
Right.
I know.
Kat, did you have a question?
I actually have a couple. Do you use strictly brushes or have you used a palette knife? Because I noticed there's some really sharp edges,
Yes.
and it looks like, how the palette knife would do.
Yeah, great question. That's very observant of you. I mostly use paintbrushes, and I've gotten to use some palette knives recently. I scratch, you're probably not supposed to do this technically, but I do scratch off my paintings. Like if I don't care for what I've built up, I'll use the palette knife to scratch it off and get back to the wood surface.
There are no rules against that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. I've taken power sanders to paintings.
Very valid at times.
Right.
It's a great question. I do use both.
And I was also wondering, for a piece like that size,
Yeah.
on average, how long would it take to, work on it?
Yeah.
Like, how much paint would you actually go through?
Great question. A lot of paint I go through. That is a little bit expensive, so Michael's coupons, best thing ever. Like, I think the white tube, the large white ones that are like this big, 1 or 2, definitely 1, normally 2 per large surface. And then I don't know how many small tubes. In terms of time, each one time is a little bit different. Like this one probably took me the shortest amount of time. That took me maybe like 3-4 months. Ones like these 2 took me more around a year to 9 months. So they are a little bit more time consuming just because of like the surface that I want to build up. And
that's interspersed with other works at the same time.
Exactly,
It's not
yes.
absolutely completely focused on one end.
Well said, yes. Mm-hmm.
Because all those things inform each other. So I think that's one of the things that, that working with multiple projects at once, it's surprising how much you stop working on A and you start working on B, and then you realize B tells you something about what you should be doing with A. So that,
That's true.
it's that creative process is nonlinear and very feeds on each other and itself.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you towards the other side of what we were talking about, how important it is. I just mainly I just want to hear reaffirmation of my ideas, that to have a space, a dedicated space for yourself, and how, whether that be a shed with cardboard boxes, but it's still very important,
Yeah.
right? And so if you could speak a little more about that, just how important that is.
For me, I spent one summer, the summer before I moved home, so right after I graduated, without a dedicated space, and I maybe did like one painting this big. Still glad I did it, but I don't really ever go back to it. I kind of got rid of it as soon as I could. The first person who said I liked that was like, it's yours, take it away. So when I have a space that I have dedicated to it, I spend more time there. And it also gives me a way to, I guess, compartmentalize what I'm doing. So I know if I'm in my art studio, I'm there to work, I'm there to create things. If I'm like sitting at home in my room, I'm there to like either hang out with my friends or like go outside, talk with my family. So it does help me divvy up the spaces, like this is what I'm doing in this space. So for me, it helps me be more productive in
Yeah,
my
I think,
space.
that's good. And so it is so very important. It also, one other thing is it signals to everyone else in your life that you're busy.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a way that just having a corner of the basement or some other space, people often then feel okay invading that space, but having a separate place conveys to everyone around you that this is serious. They need to leave it alone because that's people can be unintentionally very invasive.
Mm-hmm.
So that helps to make you very much. So think about that, the importance of that when you can, to have a place that you can absolutely dedicate, that is respected by other people.
Anyways,
You can establish that in your own house, but it's even easier though if it's a physical separation.
and I like even a space that I don't have to feel precious in. Like I have paint all over the floor, so for me, like if I was in the house, I'd be like, I'm sorry, Mom. Like I'll put down my put down paper or something. But in the shed, I feel a lot more at ease to move around in this space and to like get it pretty messy. So I find that's helpful too. If it's not a precious space to you, that's helpful.
So you feel like you have to clean up every time.
Yeah.
that many times will keep you from getting started.
That's actually
You just won't
true.
even get started because you know you don't have time to clean up. So
Yeah.
That's a thing. There's so many little stumbling blocks, and none of them intentional, but there can be so many of those little things.
Yeah.
And keeping a community of feedback. I mean, I think a lot of people, and you as a recent graduate probably have this fresher in your mind, but you'll be surprised by how much you miss deadlines,
Mm-hmm.
by how much you miss somebody saying you gotta get this due by next week. Because when no one does that, then you never finish anything. So that's a tricky bit to get yourself to finish something.
Yeah.
Because when you don't have that artificial pressure, so the thing that you're pushing against. And then I was told the same thing when I was in school, which was stay in touch with everybody because when you scatter,
Yeah.
you scatter.
Mhm.
So it's hard to be motivated by it when you're the only one.
And talking about deadlines, sometimes I'll pay for like shows in my like Lynchburg or Good area that like I know it's not really going to advance myself as an artist, but it gives me that deadline where the show's going to be now. I want to show these pieces, so I'm going to have to get them done. So sometimes it's worth paying $20 to like hang a painting or two because that gives me a deadline. So those are definitely a value.
Good.
Do you have other interests like pottery or crafts,
I enjoy
jewelry making, or?
Yeah, like more like craft things. I like knitting a lot during the winter more so, and sometimes crocheting. I really enjoy sewing as well. So I do like those things. I probably don't spend as much time on them as I do.
But you make quilts.
I actually do, strangely enough. Yes.
You're gonna need some warm things for your studio.
Seriously, guys, it's not heated or AC. It is cold.
How much fun questions? Questions?
Well, Richards don't mind if she goes up in the mountains.
Yeah. Well, okay. So that's actually so that's historically that's it really was the Impressionists who did what they call en plein air, the painting outside. It is such a pain. Painting outside is really a pain, and if anybody wants to do it, we can go ahead. But I'll help you help you, but you have to carry everything you need with you. And it's very, very difficult. So traditionally, painters like Albert Bierstadt or somebody, they didn't paint outside. They collected sketches and did watercolor was very handy. They did watercolor. But he also, people like that in the Hudson River School, they didn't really, they departed from reality also. I mean, they didn't necessarily paint what was actually true, but the bigger truth. So because you had said that you maybe start with some of the images that you collect, but then you quickly move away from them into something.
I try to, because if I can take a picture of it, like why do I need to paint it? So I do try to like think about that. Like that's something I struggle with as a landscape painter. Is like, could I just take a picture of this? Like, why do I have to paint it? So that's something I have to think about. Like as I'm painting it, like what am I bringing to this or taking away from it that a picture can't do?
Mr. Bannon, remember we talked about the movie Mr. Turner? Did you see that one?
No, I haven't.
So what period is he from? Because they were like with the big skies and landscapes.
Yeah, he tested me. So he's a romantic painter. That would be like 1850 to 1890, somewhere in there. He might have lived longer than that. I don't know, but somewhere in that time period. And that was the time period of a lot of landscape paintings and getting, and his paintings very, very much became very abstract. Some of his paintings are so abstract, it's hard to believe that they were popular in the middle of the 19th century. But of course, then a lot of times they weren't. So he was a painter who some people liked and some people did not. But the movie, Mr. Turner, is very fascinating. It's a good movie. It's a long movie. I always say this, but most movies about artists are terrible. But that's a really good one. It's
the exception to the rule then.
Yeah. There's a few coming out. There's been a couple. The Frida Kahlo movie's good.
Did you have a question?
Anything else? You have a question?
Good question. So the question was, do I start with red or blue? Great question. Initially, always blue. I've moved away from that more so now, because, well, actually that's not true. I do start with blue, first outlining, getting my general layout of things, but I don't put in all the values with blue like I used to. I used to say, here's a shadow, I'm gonna quick paint it in blue. I don't do that anymore. I outline it quickly like I was doing a pencil in blue, and then start bringing in all of the colors immediately. So great question.
You may be asking that because I make them start their paintings.
Me too, guys. It's okay.
and they're like, what?
That's right to ask. Do you like draw out the outlines and then paint it, or do you just usually look at the picture and start painting wherever?
I use a lot of lines to break it up first. So I'll look at the picture and I'll use my blue paintbrush and I'll make out lines, a lot of triangles. So I do a geometric sketch on the surface first, but I don't like line out each, like there's the horizon and here's where I want to put all of these trees, but I give them like geometric shape first. I build that up.
It's very general, and but you start with paint.
I do.
Pencil.
No, if I were to use pencil, I have tried that one time. It gets mixed up with the white that I didn't care for that, so do use paint first.
So I make it use paint.
Trying to affirm these things. I'll be here to affirm them.
But it is, that's great. That's great. I'm glad you asked that. That's a good question.
Yeah.
And it's, Marie,
That painting behind you, it's
This
really
one is mine.
the big one.
Okay.
It's really different from the rest of it. It has like little words in it. What do those, like, what does it say? And
Yeah.
why are they?
I'm not going to go into what it says. I can give you general. I don't have all of the other painting. I went through a phase where I had a lot of words incorporated in my art. A lot of those are still either other people's houses, or I have one still like at Virginia Tech showing. So a lot of the words became things that I was thinking about as I was making them, like a journal record would be, to remind myself, like when I was making this, what were some things that I was wondering about? What were some things like that I was processing through or meditating through as I was making this. How was I spending my time thinking? So that became like a place to record some of those. So not really legible, and I didn't really care for it to be legible other than a reminder of time and a reminder of thought.
That's interesting. I actually didn't realize that. That's
I was staring at it, but I don't know how to ask.
Yeah.
okay. That's really interesting. I didn't listen to that. But nothing so literal as writing out the song that's named.
Exactly.
It's not
No.
that. It's not that because yeah.
And I did have one where I did that. I like wrote out everything that I was thinking. And I was like, this is just miserable. Like I might as well get up like journal. Like this is just not worth it. So I've done that mistake before, but it's not interesting at all.
That's great. So in doing that though, are there artists that did that gave you that idea, or people who might they be?
Yeah, actually, the first artist that I saw doing it in a way that I really admired was an artist called Brian Pro. He's not very well known at all. He works with fabric and he cuts out letters, and I think he has some early pieces where he had like readable words on them. And I really admired his work because if the word was visible, it was just enough to give you something to ponder on without thinking about the form. And if it was cut out of fabric, the words and the letters were no longer like letters, but they became something else. So that definitely was the first artist. I was like, he has nailed the letters, and I'm like curious about that.
Last name again? Pro?
Pro, P-R-O-U-G-H, I think. I always spell the last name wrong.
Okay.
But if you want me to, I can try to send you a link of who
Okay,
it
that'd
is.
be great.
Mhm.
I'm actually curious on the color choices for Mountain Vine Green.
This one right there?
Yeah.
Yeah. That first started because I didn't care for the picture. It was at all. I loved the shape of it, but I didn't care for the colors in it. And so that was one where I had to I played a game with myself as I made this. Every time I came to it, I was like, if I had to choose a color out of the palette in front of me, which one do I think represents the gray hue or the nondescript hue there? Or even thinking about like, I know that different temperatures of colors bring you closer and farther away. So I also thought about like, how does the temperature of the color convey space and where it's at? So that was more experimental in the sense that I didn't have a color I was trying to make exactly to match, but I wanted to see like what was a representative of what I was seeing, or what I wanted to see. Was it? Yeah, it's not very close to what I was actually seeing.
So like experiment, like putting hot colors in the far background,
Yeah.
and making them visually come forward.
Yeah, does that or does that not bring them forward or bring them back? Because I know we talked about like warm colors creating space and cool colors creating different space. So I wanted to see like, does that actually work, or like what if I like switch that? Does it not work? So
Try it, yeah.
Mhm.
Because that's the accepted wisdom, but like challenge it.
Yeah.
See what happens.
Mhm.
All right. Anybody else have questions? Oh, I know. Did you have something?
When did you get started
Yeah, good question. So the question was, what made me start with oil paints and how was I interested in it to begin with? I didn't actually start oil painting until my junior year of college, so not that long ago. And that came just because I was doing animation at that time. And so like freshman year and sophomore year, I was doing like 3D animation things on the computer. And I was pretty like worn out by that, and I wasn't very interested. And so I really just took, Betsy was actually the first teacher that I had with oil painting. And I was like, I gotta do something like away from the computer. So I took one of her classes, and it was just an oil painting class. There wasn't any other mediums that we worked with, and I loved it so much. So it was because I was tired of another medium. I went to a different one, and then I found that that's the place I wanted to rest in for a while. Yeah.
And you talked about I used to say, I've said many times, that like the worst thing about oil painting is that it dries slowly, and the best thing about oil painting is that it dries slowly.
Okay.
So it is the frustration of trying to handle it, but then have you found that you know, understanding what it wants to do,
Yeah.
and then, you know, basically just changing your life to around what the oil paint is willing to do.
Yeah.
So it needs to be left alone for a couple of days, or then you find something else to do.
Yeah, or bring another surface to work on at the same time. And I also like another goal I started setting for myself is like, what if I never take the color from the tube and I always have to mix it with another one or not wash my brush in between uses? And so that actually helped me, like when I set that goal one time, is it wasn't dry, so if I brought another color into it, I was meeting that goal of like not bringing it straight from the tube. So that actually began to help me create goals for myself of how
That's
to
very
work.
interesting that you that's the second time at least that you sort of mentioned an idea of playing a game or setting yourself up a set of rules or setting yourself up a problem, you know, purposely putting yourself a limitation on yourself to see what the results are. I've known lots of artists that do that sort of say, well, I don't know really what to do now, so what I'll do is I will sort of invent this limitation that I'm going to have to, that I tell myself I have to follow. And that's an interesting one about, I have had teachers say, you know, try like always mix 3 colors together. Never use a color that's 1 or 2, but always a third at least to make a color.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, it's not something you have to do for the rest of your life. It's just something that you say, what happens when you do that? And you learn from it. That's good saying. I had one more question about this painting on the very end of this wall, which seems really to, it has a different kind of title.
Yes.
And it has a different, it is the most abstract, I think, of them all, although it shares some features with some of the water things. So I wanted to just ask you about that painting. My question is, what about that?
Yes. That actually came from this painting. It's kind of like the child of this one because I was thinking about like, if this was all I had, like a certain part, would that be enough for me? And that became something I was asking myself in other parts of my life. Like, if this was all I ever had, like, would that be enough for me? And so that kind of birthed that one, where I was like, what if I just broke it up into this spot? This is all I can have. Like, I can only look at this space. Is that enough for me? And am I still interested in that? And am I still going to invest time in that and satisfaction in that? So it came out of those thoughts. And then the title, I just thought about like nearness with either people or with God or with other things. Like if there's nearness, like am I okay with that? Or like are we okay with that? Or is that uncomfortable? So that's also another thing that I was thinking about as I was creating that. Like it like forced me to draw into it. So like, is that okay? Is that not okay? So that's how that piece came about.
That's great. So again, that's the sort of setting yourself a limitation and seeing, and you know, and it's very interesting because you're finding out not only what does this limitation do to my painting, but what does this limitation do to me?
Yes.
And that's so the painting can become about self-discovery. Do you feel like that's a big part of what you're doing?
Very much so. I understand either the things that I'm thinking about or things that I have never thought about in the past through painting, either the time that I spend just thinking or by the actual subject matter and creating it. Or sometimes I realize things or I come to understand things about like life or people or interactions by thinking about the subject matter and thinking about the act of doing it. So it gives me analogies to think about and understand.
That's fascinating.
Does the word comfort zone come to mind? Because in therapy once we were talking about the therapist had people, and some people didn't mind if someone got right up in their face, but other people have their comfort zones. And I see, you know, a certainness, but maybe you were exploring a different comfort zone. Is that what you were trying to say?
Yes.
Yeah. Are you comfortable being up close with that?
Am I personally with that?
No, I'm saying
in general?
that's what you were exploring.
Exactly so. I was about to say, I'm not sure I have an answer even now, but that is definitely something I was exploring.
Well, that's really great that the practice of painting can be that for you to find out. Because you have, a lot of times people don't realize the value of curiosity.
Yeah.
And to like make yourself find out. Just like what does this do? I know what I've been told it does.
Yes.
But let me see. Let me try it, experiment, not be satisfied with expectations, really put yourself to the test. That's pretty
Very
great.
true.
That's great.
You're really in your art. I mean, your personality and everything in it. It's really sweet.
Thank you.
But my favorite is that one there. I just love realistic looking.
Yes.
That one is that's so real. I mean, it's like a photograph.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's
Realist. Want to be realist.
Does anybody else want to ask me?
Yes.
So with the abstract paintings, there's not really a parameter to follow, or nothing really to guide you. How do you kind of decide when it's finished? What makes it feel like it's done and it is what you want it to be?
That's a very good question. Sometimes it honestly becomes, if I have a deadline, it's done when the deadline's there. Sometimes it becomes like, I'm super tired of this and I'm not sure I have anything else to add or take away. Sometimes it also is like accidentally done, like I'll leave it or I'll like hide it behind some other things because I really don't care for it, and I'll come to it later and be like, actually I love that, and like actually I feel like that's done and I'm going to hang this on my wall and admire it. So I've never found a way to figure out this is done and I know I have nothing more to add or take away from it. Sometimes it's a process of either deadlines or discovering that it's done.
That's a perennial problem.
Yeah.
But I do think that people a lot of times don't appreciate how difficult, sometimes people I want to do an abstract painting. And the easiest way to cure people of that is to go ahead. Because it's so much harder than people realize. I think a lot of times people might have a mistaken idea that, well, that'll be easy because I just do what I want. It's like, yeah, we'll figure out what you want and then get back to it, because that's the hardest part, is knowing what you want. So making decisions, how are you going to make your decisions? And a lot of times that's where people they set themselves up. There's whole artists who have built whole careers out of every painting is a new set of rules, and you just follow the rules and see what happens. I mean, that's a way to solve a win, or so that's a way to work. The abstract art presents lots of difficulties.
There's an artist that will remain nameless. I said, how do you know you're done? And it says, when Mr. Bannon tells me to do.
Well, you know my rule. I don't know if I told you this rule, but I think I have. My rule is that you have to work on the painting until you're no longer embarrassed by it.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that.
But that's a great question.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Any others last minute questions?
There was a comment about how come these paintings are so reasonable? Are you mass producing them?
No, I've explored different prices. That's what it comes down to. I was always asking people, like, how do you decide, like, how to price a piece? I'm exploring how to price art. I'm not really sure. I don't think there is a rule for how you price it. You can't charge based on time invested in it. You can't really charge based on materials. So I'm trying to figure out what a fair range is right now.
Well, and probably another thing with when you're starting out is to get them out there, to make them reasonable, and then as demand increases and people start asking you to do commission pieces and stuff, I think it's wonderful the prices.
Yeah, it's a very difficult thing. Prices are very. One thing that someone said, you have to get enough money back that you don't mind never seeing it again. Because you'll never see it again. So, of course, you make more.
Yeah.
I was writing up these labels, and I thought, wow, our prices are very low. But you sold 2 paintings out of the show, so there you go. There's method to the madness.
It's always heartbreaking to watch a painting go, because you always have that one feeling that it's perfect, and you can never, even if you try to remake the same one, it's never as good as the original.
No, better. The next one's better. That's the way. Oh, the next one, yeah, take it away. The next one will be better. Okay. All right, well, then I would I'd like to thank Bethany once again for bringing her work and sharing her ideas and taking the time to talk to us today. Please join me.